The Chaser Report is recorded on Gadigal land.
Striving for mediocrity in a world of excellence. This is the Chaser Report.
Hello and welcome to the Chaser Report. I'm Charles Firth, and this is a very special edition because we're very honoured to have today the only commentator in, well, the world to get the Victorian election completely spot on correct. Please welcome David Milner.
Hey, Charles. Good to be here. Yeah, thank you. It's a very strange position to be in, being the only journalist in the entire world to have got this extremely obvious thing right.
So let's just go back. You obviously wrote an article for The Shot about a week ago. I remember reading it. I can't remember any details in the article. What did you actually say that you're now claiming was the only thing that anyone sort of got right about this election?
I said that what everyone else was saying was nonsense.
Yes.
Which is true.
Yeah. But
I also said that the chances of Daniel Andrews not being Premier today, the day after the election, was just zero. This was as sure a thing as politics ever allows.
Yes.
And you should all be saying this because it's obvious and it's your job.
Yes.
And no one did.
Yes.
And now I'm in this strange position of being this like mouthy pothead that like showed up in industry.
Do you think what it shows is that the Shot should replace the rest of the media because it's the only...
I think it shows that the Shot has replaced the rest of the media.
Yes, you're right. Now, just full disclosure here, The Shot is in fact the sister publication of The Chaser. So there's a little bit of self-dealing here when we self-congratulate ourselves.
But they do it. Let's make this work for us.
Given that the result was incredibly obvious to you, and I must say, having read your article, I didn't even bother paying attention on Saturday night because it was like, oh, well, you know, it's definitely going to get in because Dave Milner's already called it a week ago. Like, is there anything interesting to say or should we just stop the podcast now because there's nothing interesting to say?
I mean, the Socceroos were good. Did you see that? we could talk about the football. No, like, did interesting things happen? The Greens won a few more seats in inner city Melbourne. That was always going to happen, and it looks like it has happened. The Liberal Party is facing the strangest self-inflicted identity crisis. It's very similar to the federal level, except they've kind of they ran advertisements this campaign directly aligning themselves with the Cooker, anti-vaxxer, Daniel Andrews guillotine protests in the streets. They use the language they use "we marched in the streets," you know, to protest against this. And so they've really aligned themselves with the nuttiest people in probably Australia's most progressive state. And it's not a good numbers play.
Yes. No, it didn't work, did it? What a shock. What was their strategy there? Was their strategy that they thought that there was a sort of an underbelly of people who weren't telling the truth in the polls and things like that? Or was it that they were so ideologically aligned with nutty cookers? Like it didn't matter to them that was a losing strategy. It was sort of like the Victorian socialists just sort of running
They're
on...
deeply committed to the nutcases, you're saying. They're ideologically
exactly.
wedded to them.
Yeah.
It's either that or it's...
Because at the same time, just at the same time, they preferenced the Greens.
In some sense.
They actually gave a bit of a boost to the Greens. Like they pushed the Victorian Parliament further left. Is this part of one of those?
They're still playing. They haven't caught up with the new demographics of the state, and they're still playing politics from like 6, 7, 8 years ago, thinking that will work because their main enemy is the ALP. But the Greens are actually viable here, and they haven't realised that.
Yeah, right. And
I think the other thing is it could be that this is like almost like what you said about Elon Musk on a Shot podcast a while ago about that sort of confirmation bias of your own experience being more universal. And I think the people in the Liberal Party and in the Herald Sun, and they should be flattered we're allowing a distinction there, they were more genuinely pissed off about lockdowns than everybody else because they're used to being able to play golf whenever the fuck they want to.
Yes.
And so they've extrapolated that experience into the wider community, whereas actually there's like nice, decent people out there that were actually happy to do this for a little bit.
Oh, so did Melbourne have a lockdown? Did they? I wasn't aware of that.
We're not doing this. We're not talking about that.
It's just, when you bump into Melbourne people, they barely mention it. So,
no. Or they start shaking in the corner and they run away.
So, the other result that I wanted to touch on is that the Victorian Socialists got 5.7% of the vote in Western Melbourne, and there was some polling booths where they were, like in Footscray and stuff like that, where they were polling like 17%, 18% of the primary vote. What is going on? Is this true? Like, is it the communist? Like, what's going on? Is Melbourne at risk of being overtaken by Bolsheviks on Women's Day next year?
15% of the vote in Footscray. That is like impressive. I imagine that's like some really, really enthusiastic students living in a really large share house, just like really committed to the cause. Because that's not a statewide trend, but yeah, possibly, perhaps people have read all the Herald Sun coverage about this communist dictator and decided, you know what, that doesn't sound bad. Let's have me some of that.
Now, I've noticed that you have been posting to Twitter this morning, David.
Yes, I've been gloating.
Unbelievably obnoxiously.
Yeah, no.
As the only journo in the state that got the election result right, I'm going to give away my trade secret. I live here, and it was obvious.
Yeah.
Are you trying to be as obnoxious as the Herald Sun commentators?
Well, you set me up to take them on from the other side and punch as hard. So let's go. Let's lean into it. Okay. It's just okay. Why I'm pointing this out isn't to stroke my own ego. It is to point out that actually they really all should have been more right than this. Yeah. This is the point we are trying to make. It was a bit obvious. And it's just, if you don't have a political agenda driving the way you're crafting your words, it's actually really quite easy to be more informative than these people have been for 6 weeks.
If I'm wrong, but wasn't the ABC as well sort of a little bit on this bandwagon? Like, I remember seeing comments in the days leading up to the election with people going, well, there is a bit of an anti-Dan sentiment, there's a bit of, or was that just, like, even the ABC got caught up in this messaging.
This is the problem when one side of the conversation is so on one end of the scale, it just drags the entire conversation that way a little bit.
Yeah.
And, like, the realm of what is possible is shifted. And, yeah, the ABC did absolutely buy into this narrative where they're just feeding each other the same lines. I saw Greg Sheridan on Insiders say exactly what Bevan Shields from the Sydney Morning Herald said, that, and it was the exact same line. It was verbatim. It was almost creepy that, Dan Andrews doesn't deserve, or was it Dan Andrews? I can't even remember what it was. It was some meek, like, pseudo-intellectual nonsense that, Matt Guy didn't deserve to win, but Dan Andrews didn't either. And it was word for word, whatever it was.
Yeah.
They're just huffing their own farts, feeding into their own narrative, believing their own shit as they're getting slowly and slowly more and more divorced from what's actually happening.
The Chaser Report. News you can't trust.
But do you think it's also because the ALP was very cleverly also doing a sort of expectations management in the last week? Like, because I saw several ALP-aligned, not commentators, but basically party people, the sort of wider circle, who were sort of going, we don't quite know. There's been, on the pre-polling, there's been a little bit of anti-Dan sentiment. It's going to be softer than we hoped. It's really important that everyone get out there and vote for the Labor Party. Like, it's almost like, the right was sort of talking themselves into a frenzy about how great the Libs were, and the Labor Party was almost sort of letting them and going, okay, great. Like, we basically can't lose. Like, if we hold, essentially Labor just stood still and they looked like it was a Dan slide.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. It was a strange election, and it really was a considering what's happened the last 3 years. It was an endorsement of what's happened here, basically, and a rejection of the counter narrative.
Yeah, and look, this is the second election that Murdoch has lost in a row in Australia. Do you think this has wider implications for, what, Anthony Albanese will be able to achieve and his government will be able to achieve, given that there's clearly not as much influence from the media as the Twitterverse would make out?
Yeah, no, I think we need to see... What we actually need to see is this happen in New South Wales, and then I'll find that argument more convincing. I do still wonder if Victoria's a slightly unique scenario because of what happened over the last 3 years and just how obvious it became.
Yeah.
That the Murdoch press was just this bludgeon to the brain of any free-thinking individual. I would like to see... I mean, when's the New South Wales election?
March.
But you don't really have a viable opposition set up there.
Yes, we do. Yeah,
Do you do? Is that
Chris Minns, I reckon, will definitely win because he's running on one single issue, and it's the perfect issue. I mean, even I agree with this issue, right? Which is it's just to eliminate tolls on roads, right?
That's so Sydney.
It's so Sydney, but it is ridiculous. Like if you want to go
drive and we want it to be cheaper.
The whole thing about tolls in Sydney is that it's entirely class based. So if you live in the western suburbs, you have to pay about $25 to get into the inner city. If you're on the North Shore, or like there's hardly any tolls at all. There's like $1-2 toll to cross the bridge, and that's it.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, right. So it's it's utterly unfair. And the Libs, of course, go, tax. "Oh, that's fine." You know, like I only ever drive from Cremorne, and you know, and so like I think, and he's just picked it right. Like Chris Minns picked it the day that he got elected opposition leader, and the problem is that the Libs. And I've talked to people inside New South Wales Treasury who are complete conservatives who just go, oh yeah, actually the toll roads make no economic sense. They just hamper commerce. It means tradies can't get, spending half their money on tolls each week. Like it's just a completely ridiculous sclerotic system that should be abolished. So even it's not only a really fucking populist issue that's easy to win, it's also makes total economic sense to unleash the productive capacity of this fine city.
I mean, that does make sense, but you had the nerve to say that Victorian politics was boring, and we've got like Nazis and mass propaganda machines, and you've got like fucking cheaper tolls. That's your issue?
That's it. Like, that's all you need in Sydney.
Wow, sounds exciting. Enjoy.
Well, I must say, because the thing is, I occasionally host people from Melbourne, and what they don't understand is that Sydney is the best thing about Sydney. You think, it used to be like the Harbour Bridge and the Sydney Opera House and things like that. The thing that actually defines Sydney now is our tunnels. We have some of the best, nicest tunnels in the world. You can you can drive around Sydney without seeing any of Sydney by just using the tunnel. We've got so many fucking great tunnels to drive through. So,
that sounds really good.
Yeah. If you lived in Sydney, you'd understand. You'd go, well, the people suck. Everyone's obnoxious. The whole of the eastern suburbs should just be killed. Oh. Our coffee sucks compared to basically every city in Australia. We've got great tunnels.
And you can just stay down there.
You can just stay down there. You don't have to interact with Sydney and all the fuckwits who are everywhere.
Secondary mole city beneath Sydney. This is what... Yeah. Your politics is fascinating.
Yeah. So, look, I don't know. I have no idea. I haven't read a Daily Telegraph in years, so I don't know what they're... But they'll try a similar thing. But I have a feeling that nobody's going to pay any attention to them.
Like, this is it. Like, have we, the audience, become too sophisticated for this shit to work? Like, what's happening? Why is this... It's interesting.
No, it's just because everyone watches TikTok and doesn't read anymore. It's just become
is that all it is? So we haven't
profoundly
become too
dumber.
Sophisticated. Yeah. We've become dumb. We've become too dumb for their own son too.
Yeah. That's it.
That's grim. I'm not sure that's the case.
So we should probably end with some sort of anecdote about the Victorian elections. Like I've spent half the time talking about Sydney's road system. Why don't we?
This is true.
Can we have one more profound insight from Australia's most accurate commentator?
It's ridiculous.
About what does this mean for the next 3 years for Dan? Is he going to resign after 2 years? Surely that's
no. I think that's just another media narrative. Like, why would he? He's actually quite young.
Well, dictators tend not to resign.
Yeah, well, exactly.
That is the thing that I found was amazing. The way because he's a dictator, he stage managed the election to look like it was really democratic and fair.
He did that really well.
Yes. And he didn't take too much of it. You know how Saddam Hussein would hold these votes and it'd be like 95%. You go, come on, that's a bit stupid.
He made it realistic.
Yes, it was very realistic. He gave enough.
He allowed a certain amount of dissent so that you would believe that you were free to dissent, like in 1984, basically.
And it was sort of a bit like actually Putin's style of democracy, where he staged. He obviously placed Matthew Guy in there, so you'd have this weak opponent who, sincerely believed that he was in with a chance.
Do you think Matt Guy thought he was a serious contender, or did he know that he was a puppet of Daniel Andrews, the supreme dictator?
No, I reckon he thought that he was in with a chance, and he didn't realise that actually in the background it was just all Daniel Andrews controlling that.
And he was a sleeper triple agent.
That's how Putin works. Like he sort of he co-ops people who, you know, are just not very effective and boosts them up as his opposition. And they do it thinking that they're actually being really good.
And they're actually just playing into his hands.
Yes.
It is probably the most plausible scenario for what happened in Victoria.
Yeah. I think Andrew Bolt's actually written that up as the narrative this morning. So.
Oh, this is good. I'm going to have so much. Okay, I've got a lot to read.
Have you? Yeah, because you're doing an article for The Shot this afternoon.
Yeah. So I need to stop wasting my time talking to you about this nonsense.
So you get back to work, but Andrew Bolt's article is fantastic because the headline is something like, "Bruised Daniel Andrews now has to go." And so the whole idea is this election has taken stripes off him because he's only increased his number of seats.
Winning is losing.
Yes, that's exactly what it is.
Far out.
And apparently, according to Andrew Bolt, he knows that he should resign now, but he's not going
because he won so convincingly for the third time.
Yeah, but no, he's bruised. They've taken stripes off him. He's wounded. Hey, I can sort of see why you're Australia's most accurate commentator, because it's really fucking easy when you got it.
It's really not about me. It's about the competition.
It's fish in a barrel, isn't it?
I'm really not doing anything other very special. It is the fucking sea of absolute numpties out there that are paid to just confuse everything and muddy the waters.
Well, I think what we might do is we might bring you up to New South Wales to cover the New South Wales election, so we can actually get some accurate commentary up here as well. Do you want to do that?
Okay. Do I have to learn about toll roads?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. I'll show you them all. I'll take you around. You can see
we
them
can
all.
see the we can see the tunnels.
The M8 is beautiful. It's the Westfield of tunnels. Okay, well, Dave Milner, as always, wonderful to hear from you. And we look forward to your article this afternoon. That's on theshot.net.au. We'll see you soon.
See ya.
All right, our Gears from Road. We are part of the Acast Creator Network. Catch you tomorrow.
Yeah, cool. Is that all good?